Chapter 861. Nolan received a call from his father, asking him to bring Maisie back to the family estate for a meal on his birthday, and he nonchalantly agreed. After ending the call, his expression dimmed a little. "I haven't celebrated any of my birthdays throughout all those years. Maisie did ask me about it the other day, but she's been busy recently, so she's probably forgotten about it." In the evening, Maisie went to pick up the kids from school early after getting off work. Daisy and Colton got into the car and asked immediately, "Mommy, is Daddy's birthday just around the corner?" Maisie was astounded. "How did you know?" Daisy giggled. "Grandpa is the one who told us about it." Maisie took a glance at the rearview mirror and could not help but laugh. "Yeah, your daddy's birthday is coming up soon. Have you thought about any gift that you want to give your daddy?" Daisy sank deep in thought. Colton spread his hands. "Sigh, Daddy doesn't seem to be lacking anything." Daisy turned to look at him and frowned. "Colton, even if Daddy doesn't lack anything, we must still show him our sincerity." Listening to the debate between the two children that was coming from the back seat, Maisie chuckled helplessly. Daisy suddenly asked, "Mommy, can I invite my friends to Daddy's birthday celebration?" Maisie smiled. "Of course." Colton crossed his arms, acting like a tiny adult. "You want to invite Nole Snolls too, don't you?" "Nole Snolls?" Maisie thought for a while. Could that be Mr. Tristan Knowles's great-nephew? Knowles is a good person. Why don't you like him? Daisy wondered. She had always had a good impression of those classmates who treated her well in class. Colton turned his head away. "I think he's a hypocritical person." She leaned over to Colton's side and winked. "Colton, you don't like him because he's smarter than you and dethroned you from your first place in class, am I right?" Colton refuted, "No, I don't." Daisy responded, "Yes, you do." Maisie was out of words. At the Blue Bay Villa, Nolan saw that Maisie had brought the two Rugrats here. It was a rare occasion for his wife to get off work early, but she was being occupied by the two kids again, and he was very upset about that. Daisy and Colton ate happily right next to Maisie. Maisie fetched them all the dishes, and when she noticed Nolan's jealous and gloomy expression, she chuckled and placed a piece of meat on his plate. "Hubby, be good and eat your meal." Nolan glared at her. "I thought you had forgotten about me." His tone sounded sour, aggrieved, and a little annoyed. Hilarity overflowed out of the corners of Maisie's eyes. "All right. I admit that I've been too busy recently. I promise that I'll make it up in a few more days. So be good." Daisy and Colton looked at Nolan contemptuously. "You. Daddy is already an adult, but he still needs Mommy to coax him." Nolan could not refute that. "I really want to throw these two rascals out." Maisie accompanied Daisy and Colton while they completed their homework in their room, and the laughter that came from the three of them penetrated through the air and traveled to the study located next to the room from time to time. Nolan held a cup of coffee to his lips and did not take a single sip from it for a long time. Compared to the liveliness coming from next door, he felt rather deserted and lonely. It was not until 10 p.m. that Maisie tucked the two Rugrats to bed before returning to the master bedroom. As soon as she opened the door, she saw Nolan standing silently outside, on the balcony. A ray of moonlight was cast on him, reflecting off the outline of his silhouette. He had not changed his clothes, and his solemn, black suit blended really well into the gloomy night. Maisie walked over and hugged him from behind. The warmth that came from behind him caused him to tremble slightly, and he turned his head to the side. "Have the kids gone to bed?" "Yeah." She pressed her cheek against his back and chuckled. "Are you waiting for me?" Chapter 862. Nolan did not speak. Maisie walked around him to get in front of him and stared up at him, and she grinned from ear to ear. "Is my hubby angry?" Nolan took a deep breath and toned his tense expression down. He then lowered his head and held her hand. "I'm fine." I'll go and take a shower first. You've been busy all day, so you should have a good rest tonight. Even though he was upset, he knew that Maisie had been really busy recently. After all, she was his wife, so he had to be a little more understanding when it came to her. Seeing Nolan walking toward the bathroom, Maisie burst into a chuckle. I'd been deliberately using the excuse of being busy to neglect him and did not mention his birthday to him throughout these few days. I think he must be very sad now. I might have to make it up for him tonight. After Nolan finished taking a shower and got changed into his nightgown, he came out of the bathroom and saw Maisie lying on the bed seductively, staring at him with her head resting on the palm of her hand. The moonlight outside the window pierced through the curtains and shone on her smooth and delicate skin, and the silk nightdress was draping over her body, showcasing her beautiful figure. Nolan narrowed his eyes, thought of something, and the corners of his lips twitched. He walked up to the bed, leaned over, placed his hand on Maisie's side, and kissed her. After a few short minutes of passionate kisses and strokes, he pulled the blanket with his hand abruptly and wrapped every inch of her in the blanket. Maisie was caught off guard. Nolan rolled over, lay down on his side of the bed, hugged the person in the blanket, and chuckled. Sleep tight. Nolan, good night. Nolan printed a kiss on her forehead and lay down, really trying to get some sleep. Maisie was stunned. Is this fella doing it on purpose? She stretched her hand out of the blanket and poked his cheek with her fingertips. Nolan, I want. Nolan turned around, hugged her in his arms, rested his chin on her head, and held back his chuckle. Go to sleep already. Maisie was rendered speechless. Fuck, he's really doing this on purpose. Nolan really fell asleep at the end, while Maisie was hit by insomnia. When she woke up the next day, Nolan had already woken up before she did, made breakfast, and left a note for her before heading to the company. The Rugrats did not have to go to school on the weekends, so they slept until 9 a.m., before they woke up. Maisie poured them some warm milk to go with the breakfast. Daisy grabbed the mug and asked, Mommy, will Waylon come back during the winter break? I miss him. Maisie paused for a split second and rubbed her on the head. Yeah, Waylon will come back to accompany you guys during the winter break. Waylon and Titus were abroad, so Maisie knew that Waylon's great-grandfather would definitely take good care of him. But the three Rugrats were used to sticking together throughout their whole lives, and she did not know if Waylon would be able to get used to being alone. Looking at these two children, Maisie actually felt quite remorseful. If it weren't for the accident that took place 3 years ago, I wouldn't have separated myself from them in such a hurry and without any notice. Not to mention the unborn baby. However, everyone has to look forward in life, and with Nolan and these 3 kids accompanying me in the future, I no longer need anything extra. Maisie waited for the children to finish their breakfast before sending them back to the Goldman mansion. While she was on her way to the company, she received a call from Barbara. The venue for the birthday banquet has been confirmed. Do you want to come and take a look at the place? Maisie was surprised. Wow, that was quick. Barbara explained, your cousin, Mr. Lucas, is paying for this, so, of course, it has to be quick. We'll wait for you here. And I'll send you the address. Looking at the address that Barbara sent her, Maisie made a U-turn and drove toward Basewave Port, which was located in the administrative district of Bassburg. Basewave Port was the largest seaport in Bassburg. And it also had the most magnificent night view. That was why it was called the Night Pearl of Bassburg. There were complexes of prosperous skyscrapers on both sides of the wide bay. During the day, the whole location would be lying under a vast blue sky, which was then embellished with white clouds and the clear ocean. Small boats and giant ships entered and left the harbor every single day. While at night, it would become a place that had a splendid night scene and bright shimmering lights. Maisie parked her car at the port. And as soon as she got off the car, she saw Barbara and Riley both standing on a sightseeing cruise ship berthed in the harbor and waving at her. Chapter 863. Maisie stepped onto the cruise ship, and the backdrop and the decoration of the venue for the birthday banquet had already been set up on the wide and spacious deck of the cruise ship. It was decorated with colorful lights and looked extremely romantic. It was said to be a venue for a birthday celebration, but it looked more like a venue set up for a marriage proposal. She was dumbfounded. "You guys," Riley moved closer to her and pointed her finger all around the place. "Look, we've arranged everything for you. The birthday celebration will be held together with the marriage proposal. You can enjoy the night view that the Base Wave Coast has to offer and propose under such a magnificent night sky. TSK, 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 isn't it extremely romantic?" Maisie was stunned for a few seconds. Then laughed out loud and looked at the two of them. "Who came up with this idea?" "Of course it's me." Louis rolled up his sleeves as he walked out from behind the backdrop with Tanner. Maisie had met Tanner 3 years ago, but her impression of him was not very clear. She just thought that he looked familiar. She laughed. "Wow, there's more to you than meets the eyes, Louis. You're actually a romantic guy." She glanced at Riley as she said that. Riley looked confused. She could just say that without staring at me. Why is she doing that? Louis patted Tanner, who was standing next to him. "You have Mr. Hannigan to thank for as he helped too. You're the one who came up with this plan. I, at most, helped to design the place according to your requirements." Tanner had a close relationship with Louis and Helios, so he was just doing his bit and trying to contribute. Maisie looked at them. "Anyway, thank you very much. Come on. I'll treat you guys to a big meal." Riley's eyes lit up in an instant. "Nice. Where are we going to eat?" Louis had come to her side at some point. "Is food the only thing that you think about all the time? Eating and pooping are parts of human nature. You tell me. Who in the world doesn't need to eat?" Riley refuted, and Louis's expression changed immediately. Barbara heard the debate from the side and burst into laughter. Eating and pooping should be discussed separately. Otherwise, others would think that you're interested in eating crap. Riley was rendered speechless. Louis raised his arm and placed his elbow on top of Riley's head. The height difference between the two of them made their interaction look really adorable. "It's okay. Riley has never been a bright woman." Riley smacked his elbow off her head. "Get your hand off me." Maisie cleared her throat slightly, then turned to Barbara and said, "Let's make a reservation at the restaurant first." Barbara did not want to be a third-wheeler. So she nodded and left with Maisie. It was only natural for Tanner not to want to be left behind and be the only third-wheeler, so he patted Louis on the shoulder. "I'd go back first." "Hey! Are you people just going to leave me here?" Riley watched as they all went away and glared at Louis furiously as if she was a wife whom her husband had just wronged. "Will you die if you stop poking me for a second?" Louis leaned over to her side and gave off a pregnant smirk. Poke is a word with multiple meanings, or to be precise, two. So which poke are you referring to? Riley was a slow learner when it came to picking up emotions, but she was not a retard. Not to mention that she was one of those ladies who were not afraid of telling connotative jokes back when she was still a college student. She did not expect Louis to be so full of surprises. You're out of your mind." She pushed him away with disgust, turned around, and ran away. Louis rubbed his chin and laughed. She actually understood. At this time, in the Boucher manor. Because Maisie had already gotten pregnant, the two families had arranged a meetup to plan for their wedding. Mr. and Mrs. Hannigan were delighted. Their daughter getting married into an honorable family would only bring their family, which was currently facing loads of crises, plentiful benefits. Maisie sat next to her parents and behaved very well in front of Elder Master Boucher. On the other hand, Eugene and Francisco had different expressions on, especially Francisco. He had not put on a semi-gleeful expression ever since the Hannigans set foot in the manor. Chapter 864. Nathaniel asked tentatively, Elder Master Boucher, about the marriage between Z and Francisco. Richard took a sip of tea and responded indifferently, Mr. Hannigan. You should know that Miss Hannigan will get married to the Bouchers only because of the baby that she has conceived. Considering Miss Hannigan's reputation in the past, we'll get the two kids to get engaged first. As for the wedding ceremony, it'll be held during the spring of next year. The next year? Mr. and Mrs. Hannigan looked at each other, and Mrs. Hannigan said, Isn't it a little too late for it to be scheduled for next year? Wouldn't the baby in Z's belly be a little too obvious to the eyes of outsiders by then? How could Nathaniel not understand what Richard meant? The Bouchers obviously disliked his daughter's previous reputation. Not to mention that they had tried to marry their daughter to Helios just a little earlier. And of course, after being rejected by Helios, his daughter had changed her target to Francisco almost immediately, which was indeed a rather unpleasant thing to do. Besides, his daughter was already pregnant. Francisco scoffed. I think my grandfather's idea is quite thoughtful. If we were to get married right away when the child isn't mine, to begin with, wouldn't I be taken advantage of? Maisie's face turned pale, and she pursed her lips tightly and did not utter a single word. Nathaniel's expression did not look too good, while Mrs. Hannigan felt sorry for her daughter and fought for her. Mr. Boucher, how could you say that about Z? If Z wasn't pregnant with your child, then why would Z come to your house with us? That's quite an irresponsible thing to say, isn't it? Richard put the teacup down. You can leave that to us. We'll decide whether the baby is Francisco's child or not when the time comes. If so, the Bouchers will never treat Miss Hannigan shabbily. After all, the baby that she's carrying will be one of the descendants of the Bouchers. He then raised his head and looked at the Hannigans. The wedding ceremony will be set for next year. This is also to test whether Miss Hannigan can become someone that qualifies as the granddaughter-in-law of the Bouchers. As long as we don't see any scandals that are related to Miss Hannigan within half a year after the engagement, I'll recognize Miss Hannigan and take her in personally. Mr. and Mrs. Hannigan could not say anything more. Since you've made up your mind, we won't say anything more. Richard then looked at Maisie with a keen gaze. Miss Hannigan, will you be willing to accept my arrangements? Maisie returned to her senses and forced a smile. Yes. All he wants is 0 scandals coming from me for half a year, isn't it? I'll be considered the future second young mistress of the Bouchers as long as I get engaged to Francisco. Eugene looked at his father after the Hannigans left the manor. Father, how did you come up with the idea of delaying the wedding ceremony? He wants them to get engaged first, then only get married next year. There's almost half a year left to spare. I clearly remember that father insisted on Francisco marrying Maisie as soon as possible the last time this topic was brought up. Richard glanced at the father and son duo, got up on his cane, and went upstairs without saying a word. Eugene and Francisco left the main manor and happened to run into Helios in the courtyard. Helios nodded slightly at Eugene. Uncle Eugene. Eugene nodded back and returned without waiting for Francisco. Francisco thought of the trouble he had caused others after getting drunk at Glitz and sighed. Helios, I got too drunk and vomited all over Miss Chase the other night. Please apologize to her for me. Helios lowered his gaze, thinking about what had happened that night. It seems that I haven't seen Barbara for quite some time. She got rather drunk that night too, so I guess she might not remember a thing too. I really envy you, Helios. Francisco smiled wryly. You can choose not to marry the woman who was arranged for you. But I don't want to marry a woman like Maisie Hannigan. I don't even believe that the child she has conceived is mine. Didn't grandfather postpone the wedding until next year? Francisco was flustered and stared at Helios. How do you know that? Chapter 865. Helios frowned. I asked my father to suggest it to grandfather. Used to be a playboy, but you've changed a lot ever since you returned from the training camp, so I don't believe you would do that. Francisco was extremely moved upon hearing this. Helios. I knew that you would believe in me. I swear I didn't touch Maisie. It's just that what? Francisco felt very aggrieved. It's just that I lost consciousness after drinking that glass of wine. And the next thing that I remember is that I was sleeping in the same bed as Maisie when I woke up. I was totally unconscious the whole night, so what could I do to her? Helios squinted his eyes and fell into deep thought. After a short while of pondering, he asked, "Who handed you that glass of wine?" Francisco thought of something and said, "It's Maisie." I only drank the glass of wine that she handed me. Before, he reacted in an instant and gnashed his teeth in anger. I knew that it's impossible for me to fall unconscious only after a few glasses of wine. That glass of wine that Maisie handed me was definitely spiked. My friends at the table have no reason to spike my wine. Great, that bitch is already bold enough to spike my drink. Helios placed his hand on Francisco's shoulder. Don't worry, I'll get to the bottom of this matter for you. Anyway, you have another half a year to go, so just bear with it for now. Francisco nodded solemnly. After Francisco left, Helios' phone rang as he received a call from Lewis. At Black Gold. Tristan was sitting in the reception lounge, drinking tea, and he chuckled with a hint of mockery flashing across his eyes when he saw Nolan appearing at the door. You've become an on-screen couple with the eldest heir of the Bouchers. That's not something that I get to see every day. Nolan walked up to the couch opposite Tristan, sat down, and crossed his legs. Why are you here? Tristan rested his arm on the back of the couch. How could you say that to me? I'm still your uncle, no matter what. It seems that your age is catching up to you, Mr. Knowles, and it's made you a lot more shameless. Nolan scoffed without showing him any respect at all. Tristan did not care about Nolan's attitude. Being a little shameless isn't always a bad thing. Your daughter and son share the same school as my great-nephew, and they even share the same class. It's fate that the children were able to meet each other. Nolan's expression dimmed, and he glared at Tristan without making any noise. Tristan picked up the teacup on the table. Your daughter's name is Daisy, isn't it? I can see that she's a thoughtful and adorable girl just by listening to her name. What are you trying to get through to me? Nolan started to get a little impatient. Tristan took a sip of tea and said with a smile, I won't beat around the bush anymore. I need you to take my great-nephew into your house for a certain amount of time. Nolan laughed out of pure wrath. Are you asking me to help you take care of that kid for the Knowles? Tristan raised his eyebrows. You can say so. After all, that kid still has to address you as his uncle, doesn't he? That's a no from me, Nolan replied clearly. You people from the Knowles are sending your only grandson thousands of miles over to Zlokova just to study here. That, at its core, is an unimaginable thing to do. If I'm not mistaken, something must have happened to the Knowles in Yaromor. Am I right? Zlokova isn't the Knowles' territory, but the Knowles have sent their only heir here to Basburg. Not to mention that Tristan has come to me personally, asking me to take care of the kid, but he, in fact, only wants to leave the boy in a safe place. They really know how to pick their targets. Tristan said calmly after laughing out loud, You're indeed not a simple-minded man. The Knowles are indeed facing some difficulties nowadays. And we wouldn't have sent him to Zlokova if it were not the last resort that we have. Please rest assured, we'll never implicate you in the matters that we're currently facing. We only need that child to stay safe and sound. So, please help our family out for the sake of us raising and nurturing your mother back then. Chapter 866. Maisie booked a seafood restaurant and was the first to arrive with Barbara, then Lewis and Riley got there much later. Maisie looked out the door. Where's Tanner? Riley pulled up the chair next to Maisie and was smiling sweetly. He went to get some drinks. I invited my cousin too, and they'll be coming together. What? Helios is coming too? Barbara said loudly, and the three others turned to look at her. Maisie didn't say anything. Riley, on the other hand, was curious. Yes, is there a problem? No, Barbara's face was tense. And she looked uncomfortable. Riley stared at her and seemed to understand something. Barbara, did something happen between you and my cousin? Maisie took a sip of water and thought about something while Lewis, sitting next to Riley, flipped through the menu. Your cousin saved Miss Chase. What else could have happened? That's true. Riley suddenly got excited. That reminds me, I didn't know that my cousin could be that manly. Maisie burst out laughing. He was quite manly when we were at Winston Island too. Riley got close to her and blinked. You got him and Mr. Goldman to become spokespeople for your jewelry brand. That's a smart use of resources. Did Mr. Goldman get angry? Maisie gnashed her teeth. He's quite happy about it. So happy she almost couldn't get out of bed. At that moment, Tanner and Helios appeared outside of the room together. Tanner was holding 2 bottles of Remy Martin in his hands, which cost around $6,000. Helios had shades and a cap on. He didn't have his assistant with him and was in casual clothes. Sorry for keeping you waiting. Tanner placed the bottles on the table and took a seat next to Lewis. Helios sat in the empty seat next to Barbara. Riley waved her hand. Don't worry. We just got here too. Helios took off his shades and cap. Why are we suddenly having dinner? Lewis smiled. Isn't it Mr. Goldman's birthday soon? We came to decorate the party venue, and my cousin is buying. Maisie put down the glass of water. Just order anything. Don't be shy. Riley nudged her with her shoulder. Ms. Vanderbilt is being very generous. The server came to take the orders, and after that, Tanner popped the Remy Martins and poured it into the decanter while asking, who doesn't want a drink? Barbara. Are you drinking? Riley asked Barbara, who was sitting next to her. Helios looked at her and saw her looking back, and at that moment they both looked away. Barbara said, I don't want too much. Maisie squinted. She felt that something was going on between Barbara and Helios. After the food came, everyone started eating and had a fun conversation. Unexpectedly, Barbara, who was usually talkative, was exceptionally quiet that day. Helios was too. Riley took over the conversation. She rolled her eyes, then clapped her hands together. Let's have a game of truth or dare. Are you setting the rules? Tanner asked. Riley stood up. Let's spin the lazy Susan, and the person which the chosen dish pointed to will have to pick either truth or dare. Lewis crossed his arms, looked at her, and raised his brows. All right. No one will get to wiggle their way out of this. Chapter 867. Do I look like someone who would try to get out of this? Riley pointed at herself and challenged him, I'm the best when it comes to games. Lewis laughed. Maisie cleared her throat. All right, let's start then. Barbara, Helios. Are you all right with this? She asked them intentionally. Helios smiled. I'm fine with anything. Seeing that Barbara couldn't decide, Riley shook her arm. Barbara, join us, be part of it. Barbara didn't want to refuse, so she agreed. Riley spun the lazy Susan. And the designated dish was the lobster. The lobster stopped in front of Tanner, who was surprised. I choose truth. Riley immediately asked, Are you a virgin? Lewis spat out his cognac and choked. Everyone there had an awkward expression, and even Tanner was surprised. We're going all out? Riley put her hands on her waist. That makes it fun. You chose truth. He gnashed his teeth. No, they chose another designated dish and turned the turntable. The disc slowly stopped in front of Barbara. Barbara's grip on the wine glass tightened. She gnashed her teeth and said, I choose Dare. Tanner thought for a moment, and since she was a girl who he wasn't close with, he didn't want to make it too bad. Finish one entire glass. Helios frowned but saw Barbara pick up her glass and drink all the alcohol. Barbara turned the turntable, and Louis was next. He chose truth, and she asked, What do you love about Riley? Hey, Riley looked at Barbara. Her face started to turn pink while everyone else had their eyes on Louis. Louis looked straight at Riley. I guess she's a little silly. Riley exploded, You're the silly one. After a few rounds, the turntable pointed back at Tanner, and the latter looked at Louis. I choose Dare, but don't go overboard. No way, we're best buds. Louis gave a knowing smile. Text a female friend and tell her that you want to sleep with her. Tanner took a sharp breath. Are you really my friend? Other than Helios, everyone was drunk and agreed, send it. Send it. Tanner could only blame his own luck. So he took out his phone and sent a message while Louis looked on. Louis teased him, You picked your fiancée? Maisie and Riley were both shocked. Tanner's fiancée was the daughter of the La Perla group, Pearl Santiago. Tanner looked up and said in a serious tone, She's my fiancée. So I wouldn't be ashamed. I'll explain to her later. He put his phone back into his pocket. The game became saucier. They were either exposing secrets or dealing out crazier dares. Barbara drank a few glasses of wine. She seemed sad, and her face felt warm. Riley and Maisie were both pretty drunk too. The only one who had gotten lucky was Helios. My turn. Riley spun the turntable, and it finally landed on Helios. She froze and looked at him, confused. Helios? Helios put down his wine glass and looked helpless. Dare. Riley laughed. I'll choose the person next to you. Give her an intimate kiss. The other three suddenly got interested. Barbara, who was quite drunk, suddenly noticed that something was off. She then tugged on Riley's hand. You're framing me. The person next to him is me. Chapter 868. Riley pointed to Tanner, Well, then. Helios and Tan? Tanner shuddered and raised his hand to object. No, I don't kiss men. Riley and Barbara looked at each other and seemed to have imagined something, then laughed out loud. Helios finally chose truth. Riley lay on the table and asked, I've always wanted to ask, do you have a crush on someone? Barbara rubbed her nose bridge, and when she heard Riley's question, she froze, and her ears perked up. Maisie picked up the wine glass and smiled. I want to know too. Tanner and Louis chimed in, We all want to know. Helios looked down. Not for now. The three got quiet. Barbara sat there quietly, not sure if she was drunk or sober, and didn't know what to think. Maisie looked at both of them and didn't make a sound. Seeing that Riley was still not done, Louis cleared his throat. We're almost out of alcohol. Let's stop here. She objected. No, I haven't had enough yet. We can still continue. Louis walked behind her and held her by the shoulders, We're done eating and have had enough to drink. It's time to stop. Maisie got up. I'll send Riley home. She looked at Helios and said, Helios, Barbara, and Tan would be your responsibility. Helios was surprised but didn't say anything. Tanner felt his gut lurch and waved his hand. I have a driver. There's no need for hells to drive me. Maisie nodded. All right then. They all left the room. Louis helped the drunk Riley into the car. He and Helios hadn't drunk a lot. Helios stopped his car at the restaurant's side door and parked in front of Maisie. Barbara rolled down the window of the passenger's side while rubbing her forehead. Maisie, why did I drink so much? Maisie looked at Helios. It's all right. Helios will send you home. Helios looked at her. Drive safe. Maisie nodded and waved goodbye. At the same moment, Nolan sent a message to her. In the car, Barbara leaned back in her seat and was very drunk. That night, I drank too much too. I didn't do anything, did I? Helios paused for a bit before he continued, keeping his eyes on the road. No. Oh, she tried hard to remember and seemed to remember that something had happened, but her mind was a blur, and she couldn't remember anything. Do you always act that way when you're drunk? Helios asked. She paused. What way? Helios didn't speak. She turned to look at him. Perhaps every drunk person would see things through weird filtered lenses. Why, aren't you married? Helios didn't look away. I haven't found the one. What's your type? Barbara smiled while she said, I can introduce someone to you. Helios chuckled. You're turning into a matchmaker when you're drunk. Barbara patted her chest. If it doesn't work out, I'll introduce myself to you, ha ha ha. Helios rolled his eyes and spoke again after a long pause. You really have had too much to drink. It was quiet for a moment. Helios thought of something and asked, what's the key code to your home? They couldn't stay out again because she had gotten drunk like the previous time. Barbara leaned back on the seat and closed her eyes. Fingerprints work too. Chapter 869. Helios nodded. When they got to her apartment, Barbara was asleep. He took a deep breath, parked his car, walked to the passenger side, and carried her out. When they got to her door, he unlocked it with her fingerprint. Her home was clean and spacious. There wasn't a lot of extra furniture or things. He carried her into the room, which had a white theme. It looked spotless. There were plushies in front of the window, and the book racks were filled with comic books and figurines, limited editions, and special editions. Covering the shelves. Even the posters on the walls were comic book characters. If he didn't see this with his own eyes, he wouldn't believe that she had this side of her. Helios laid her down on the bed, and once she touched the bed, she slept more soundly. He wanted to pull his hands out, but Barbara turned and trapped his hands under her body. Helios was surprised. His arms were stuck, and he could only stand leaning down. Barbara's face was facing him, and when she breathed, her warm breath that smelled like alcohol blew in his face. Helios slowly moved his arms. She was very much asleep and had no sense of defense at all. He felt helpless. Did she trust him too much, or was she not defensive with everyone else too? Helios tucked her in and left her room not long after. He left her home but was caught by a woman who was hiding in the corner with her phone camera. Katrina zoomed in and realized that it was Helios. I caught him leaving Yelena's home. Are they actually dating? How is Yelena so lucky? I am not going to allow that. Maisie smelled like alcohol when Nolan carried her into their home. She had her arms around Nolan's shoulders while she sweetly smiled. My husband is the best. Sure. Nolan laid her down on the bed and looked at this drunken woman who seemed sober but was drunk. What's great about me? She didn't want to let go. Are you still upset? Nolan chuckled. I'm not. She mumbled with a sad look, you didn't let me touch you last night. You're a bad man. Nolan sat at the edge of the bed. She lay down, her long hair sprawled over the pillow. Her eyes were smiling and a little seductive. He tidied her hair, lowered his head to kiss her, and laughed. You've been cold to me for so long, but I can't retaliate? I admit that I did that intentionally, Maisie beamed, but it was because... I don't want to tell you. She was drunk. But not enough to divulge secrets. Nolan pinched her cheek. You're quite tight-lipped. What are you hiding? She turned around and put her face on his leg as she felt tired. It's something that I need to hide from you. It would have been a waste of effort if I told you. Nolan stared at her, pushing the hair on her face behind her ear. He could have guessed. After a few days, there was news about Helios secretly dating a girl, and once the news broke, everyone was shocked. Helios had never had a scandal about dating since his debut, and he had been caught going to the woman's place this time. Helios fans were pretty logical, and since their idol was old enough, it was normal for him to be in a relationship. They were famous for asking him to get married. But a group of people suddenly came out of nowhere and tried to tell the story that Helios and Nolan were supposed to be a fake couple, but were now involved with a woman. They claimed that he was lying to the fans. Chapter 870. At Royal Crown. Morgan Lynch placed the tablet on Helios' desk, showing that he was trending on Twitter. Helios picked up the tablet and read. He was surprised. Morgan asked, "Are you really in a relationship?" No, Helios frowned. This had been taken on the day he sent Barbara home. There's a huge argument online. Your fans are arguing with cyber troopers. You were just on magazine covers with Mr. Goldman not too long ago, and now you are rumored to be in a relationship. The fans who shipped you two together are not having any of this. Once the fans accepted a shipped couple, it would stay that way. Many of the fans would become obsessed with the couple and would not be able to accept their ship being destroyed. Helios didn't say anything. Morgan said, "I should post a tweet to clarify." No, Helios put down the tablet and rubbed the bridge of his nose. If someone is paying the cyber troopers, there's no point in clarifying. And he looked up at Morgan. The ship is fake. I can't date men for the rest of my life. He knew that he had passed the age of idols, and there was no longer the need to stay single. If his fans understood, would he care what others were saying? At the same time, Maisie read the news in her office. She knew the apartment well. It was where Barbara lived. Were they followed by the paparazzi when he drove Barbara home? Riley called her. Z, something happened to Barbara. A bunch of fans are congregating at her apartment. I don't know how they found her address. We're both stuck. Maisie got up. What about the security team there? There are just a few of them, and they couldn't control them. Heavens, they're coming up. Riley sounded anxious. I don't know what to do. Have you called the police? Yes, but they're not here yet. It was getting noisy on Riley's end. And then loud knocking sounds came from the door. Maisie frowned and took out her car keys. Call the police again. I'm coming over right now. Riley stood behind the door and was worried it wouldn't hold much longer upon hearing the commotion outside. Barbara paced around her home. Helios had been caught on the ground floor of the apartment. If there was only that one photo, how did they know which floor and unit she was staying at? Something felt fishy. The door suddenly shook. Someone was trying to kick down the door, and Barbara lost it. I'm going to talk to them. Riley stopped her. You'll be torn apart if you go outside now. Don't go. They didn't know if the fans outside were really her cousin's fans. Not only were they impulsive, but they also weren't really logical. If she went out now, she would be torn to pieces. Are we just going to wait for them to come in? Barbara had no intention of waiting any longer. She couldn't stand there and watch them break into her home. Riley kept looking at her phone and was anxious out of her mind. Why are the police not here yet? I'm going out to clear things up. Barbara walked to the door and was going to turn the knob, but Riley pulled her back. You wait here. I'll go out. Before Barbara could speak. Riley opened and immediately closed the door and yelled at the people in the corridor.